Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 2 Episode 4. It's called Invasive Procedures. So, spoilers for the episode, as always. This one ends up revolving around Dax, although less about her character and more using her as a MacGuffin for other characters in a lot of ways. Because she spends most of the episode asleep.
Yeah, basically.
Well, our symbiote doesn't, so I guess it's still kind of the character. But
it is Dax, but it's not Jadzia Dax.
It's not Jadzia Dax, yeah.
Yeah.
The episode starts off with the station's being evacuated for a plasma storm, and it's only just the bare bones crew that are left to sort of batten down the hatches, as it were. And Quark, that sneaky little bugger, has planted a little device to take care of the security systems at the airlock. He thinks he's just selling some stuff to some Klingons, but it's actually this other plot to effectively kidnap the symbiote in Dax, because this other Trill is miserable that he never got to get a symbiote. Which actually raised some interesting thoughts. Maybe this was clear before and I've just forgotten about it. I don't think I remembered there been a thing where there were humanoid Trills who never got a symbiote. I feel like I've forgotten that if I ever did know that.
I think it's something that I can't say it's come up necessarily before in the shows at this point, in production, but I think it came up while we were watching Discovery.
It may have done, yeah.
I think it was something I was aware of, at least in passing, but I'm not sure where that's from specifically.
Certainly the idea that only 1 in 10 get a symbiote, that surprised me. I was like, oh, okay, so it's a lot of the population, so you're seen as a bit more special because you got a symbiote then. Like, that's new to me, certainly. This idea that there's like she's not the 1%, but she's the 10%, and the other 90%, have to do without. And he's quite miserable about this, which, by the way, while John Glover appeared...
God damn it. As if I couldn't escape Lionel Luthor today.
I know. We recorded a Smallville after this, and we got a double dose of John Glover.
Honestly, the first, 10 seconds, I didn't recognize him. And then he opened his mouth, and I was like, oh, God damn it.
I did recognize him partly because I've seen him in this time period before and other things, but also...
I have as well. It just took me a few seconons.
I saw his name at the start, so I was kind of waiting for him.
Okay. I didn't catch that, which that would have been a giveaway.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they come on, they siege everyone who's left and force Dax down to the med bay. They force Bashir to work on him. He refuses, of course, but they attack O'Brien to sort of make him. It's all under duress, effectively. But that's the basic gist of the episode. The symbiote does get taken and swapped to the new person, but they point out that, usually the host, once it's been removed, is dead within a few hours, but typically they're old, and that's why it's been removed, because they're going to a new host. This is a little different in that Jadzia is still quite young, so her body might last a while, but it still gives it this ticking time clock of okay, if we can get it back out of him and put it back in her in this time period, she might be okay.
Yeah, and you've got, she's in the doctor's office, they're keeping her stable. It's not just... I assume if he wasn't doing all these things, she probably would be dead pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, he's given her the best chance she's got, but there's still a ticking time clock kind of element to it.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Invasive Procedures?
I quite liked it for the most part. Again, I think it's showing a lot of that history between the Dax symbiote and Cisco, which was really prevalent in the first 5 or 6 episodes, I think, of the first season. And then it kind of went away mostly as we got to know Dax and Jadzia a bit more. But it was nice bringing that back up and kind of really relying on that for a lot of how this episode really it works for the back half. It all kind of builds on that relationship.
Yeah, I think it's got some slow patches in the back half. All the ideas when they're bringing them up are quite... the siege is interesting and exciting and fun. The characters all involved are fun, Quark playing a part, and the characters realizing Quark's got something to do with it. That's all pretty entertaining.
Every part of the episode that is in.
But the ideas of what's going on, and some of the bigger ideas about who this guy's going to be once he's... because he's got his wife there who's helping him do all this, but as Cisco points out, once he's merged with the symbiote, he's not just going to be him anymore. He's going to be kind of a new person. And all those ideas that come from that were all really interesting. I just think the back half's just got some slow patches where I feel like we're just kind of waiting around with people, sort of waiting to take their moment to like jump and attack the Klingons or whatever it is. But
it does.
I think the ideas are really strong. Though I was surprised that this one's got a bit of a lower rating than IMDb compared to the previous. I mean, I'm not saying it's as good as the 3-parter we just had by any means, but I don't think it's a bad episode.
Yeah, I would agree that it's not as strong as the 3-part, but that's probably not fair.
Yeah, but this is a 6.8 on IMDb. It's under a 7.
Oh no, though, it's not that low.
No,
I liked it a lot more than that.
Yeah, I would say I did too. The idea is simply fascinating enough that we're dealing with, once the symbiote swapped and we've got this John Glover, who I'll get his name just so I can call him something.
I think.
Varad.
Ah, damn.
Yeah.
And it was a verse something.
How humiliating for you. How humiliating.
It was a guess.
You may as well
watched this like 6 hours ago.
Just humiliating.
You watched this like 15 minutes ago.
I have
you had to check.
I have secondhand embarrassment for you right now. It's that bad. Anyway, so
I'm like 6 drinks deep. I don't care.
Well, I'm still embarrassed for you, just more for the alcoholism than the forgetting the name.
I say that they are 2.8%.
Which, funnily enough, is how much of the brain that you got used to of.
That's terrible, and also this is very weak. So 6 of these is like nothing.
6 of your brains is like nothing as well.
that is true, yeah.
But yeah, this whole idea, Varad comes out and he's merged. So it's all of a sudden, like before there was this, like, hostage taker relationship with Sisko. And then Sisko immediately starts like, wait a minute, Dax is in there now. And he starts talking to him like they're old friends. And it's this really weird dynamic. And it works so well because just before this scene, there was a scene where Sisko talks to the wife and tries to tell her, hey, he's going to be different. He might not really care about you that much anymore. As much as you'll still have those memories, he's going to be someone like the person is going to be like 1/9 of this because he's already had 8 lives, right? Yeah. 1/9 of him will be the man you knew. That's a pretty small part of him, all things considered. And sure enough, like it cuts to her a few times as he's reminiscing with Sisko, and it's like, oh, this feels a bit uncomfortable.
I kind of loved all this stuff with him just being like, hey, we're best mates. We've been through so much together. I dropped my wife. I spent like, a little bit of time with her. Whatever. That's nothing.
I think, and in a way, it kind of made me feel like, especially since we're talking about the, I even said, the 10%, compare it to the 1% of, financial current times. And I was kind of thinking this whole thing with the wife was the idea that, okay, he's using her because he wants this better way of life, but instead for him it's not money, it's all these experiences you have by being connected to a symbiote. And once he has it, he does just cast her aside. Now there's contextual reasons for it in the story because he's not really himself anymore and he doesn't care about her the same way, but that way that he's using her to get what he wants, and then that's it. Once he's got it, she's put to the side. That does feel like it's kind of like goes with that metaphor of like someone who's just using someone for their career or something like that, something that will give them a better lifestyle, a better, financial security. But then once they have it, it's like, well, that's all that person was for. Now, I'm not saying that that's how he felt about her before he got the symbiote. Like, he might have genuinely loved her and genuinely wanted to include her in his future. But, did he predict the idea that, hey, there's a chance when I get the symbiote that I may not feel that strongly about you anymore? He may have thought of that and just not said that, which is maybe the more malicious element of it.
I think we get enough of him at the start of the episode, pre-symbiote. He's a very timid man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that was a part of it. I don't feel like it was malicious with that. I think there was a genuine relationship between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I don't think he realized just how much this would change him.
I think that's fair. And that also ties in because at the end of the episode when they've got him back and they've got him on the table, they've given it back to Jadzia Dax, and he's lying there and he's like, I feel so, and this is something that Jadzia also said when it was first taken out, is that, I feel so alone. Like, I feel, and she starts crying. He kind of does the same thing. He said, I'm so alone. And his wife's like, you're not alone, you've got me. And he's like, no, I'm alone. And he looks away from her. He doesn't actually say that second part, but that's the reaction he gives. He's like, no, you're inconsequential. Like, what I had there is way more important than you. And that kind of felt, again, like fame and money and success. And it's like, okay, it's great that you're there, sure, but like I got a taste of this better life and it's gone immediately. So I was getting a lot of those kind of like allegories throughout between all these things.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's the only way to read it either. I think there's also something to be said of like the Trills represent a true marriage in some ways, of like actually having someone you're completely and utterly bonded with. And that's, you know, the reaction Dax gives when it's taken out is, oh, like, I'm so alone. It's like a spouse has just died in a lot of ways. It kind of feels like that, which is why it adds that extra layer to it when he's upset about losing his symbiote, but his actual wife is standing right there, and it's not, you know, it means nothing to him effectively at that point.
Right. Whereas I don't think if this was like the start of the episode pre-symbiote and, you know, when he was dying, I don't think he'd have a even a remotely similar reaction, you know, with his wife. I think, I do think it was a genuine relationship up until that point. I don't think it was this malicious thing like, oh, I'm gonna be better. The way they talk about it, it's like, oh, he'll be a bit more confident. He'll be more sure of himself. You know, he'll just be a better version of himself.
Well, it's the experience and confidence of 8 lives, right? Like after 8 lives, you would be more confident just because.
I hope so.
You've done a lot. You've had a lot of experiences. Maybe malicious was the wrong word. Maybe I just mean more like he knew there was a chance that he was going to feel differently, but had decided that either he didn't care or that was worth the risk. Or maybe he genuinely believed, no matter how much I change, nothing will affect how much I love my wife. Like maybe that's the sort of naivety he was getting with.
Yeah, I think it is quite naive, because I think that's how he's obviously fairly bitter, right? That's kind of putting it mildly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing all of this. Because not being chosen.
He knows what he's doing is going to kill Jediah Dax. Like he knows this is going to kill this young woman, and he doesn't care. If his reaction is like, "I don't want to talk about that," that's literally what he says at one point when someone says she's dying. He's like, "I'd rather not discuss that part. Let's just ignore that, please."
Yeah, and maybe that lends some credence to the idea that he has thought about, hey, this might change how he feels about his relationship, but in the same way, he just doesn't want to think about that with what's going on, you know, to the other body. He just doesn't want to think about this, the possibility that maybe there is going on that.
That makes me go back around to the whole like financial success and security thing, because it's got a bit of that, well, I got mine, so I don't care about you kind of attitude sort of mixed in there. There's a little bit of that sprinkled in with that.
Maybe. I'm reading it more as a he's scared of having to confront that. Like it's not.
Sure. Like... I still kind of mean that. I guess obviously I said it in a kind of a mean, like spirited way, but like this idea that you don't want to think about the people who are suffering so you can have the comfort you have, right? Let's ignore the, you know, in the real world, the poor people.
Yeah, we all do that to some degree, right?
Right. You know, let's ignore bad things that are going on elsewhere so I can live my comfortable life. You know, it's that, but again, it's turned up to 11 because she's literally downstairs dying. Like it's not like she's you know she's a turbo lift away.
yeah. So it's very much being forced to confront the consequences of his actions. Over the course of the episode.
So I think all that stuff's quite strong. I also enjoyed, like, if there's a complaint to be had, it's maybe the Klingons are just these goons for hire by this guy, and they're not actually that important. And maybe in hindsight, because when they first came on the ship, I was quite excited because they were like, "Hey, you're the shapeshifter, right? Get in this box, and we're going to put you in stasis." They know how much of a threat Odo being around is, and how powerful that power that he has is. So they're like taking care of it quite quickly. But once the episode gets going after that, it's like, oh, they're just the hired goons. They're just like bodyguards.
There's enough just little things at the start that do make you interested. Well, I think it's O'Brien, right as they come in, he's like, hey, you know, the Klingon Empire, the Federation, we're at peace. We're allies. What are you doing? And
it means something coming from him because he literally works with a Klingon, or has done.
Right. And they say, oh, you know, well, not all of us agree with the way the Empire's run right now. Which again, we obviously saw a lot of that stuff in our Worf's episodes in Next Gen.
That makes sense, yeah.
But this here, it got the sense here that these were, you know, rogue agents almost, like, you know, they were, but they're just hired goons.
Yeah, it felt like they were going to be characters as opposed to just the angry Klingons who are there to be outsmarted eventually by the other characters, because it's fun seeing Bashir trick the one where he sedates him instead of Quark, who's down there for an injury at that point.
After Quark tries to take out the Klingon single-handedly.
This is the beauty of it. So let's talk about Quark. Quark, at the start of the episode, O'Brien finds him. Brian and Odo, I should say, find him in like one of the airlocks, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm saying goodbye to my brother," and like, he left 3 hours ago. I love this detail because it was just in the last 3 episodes he didn't go on an evacuation ship because there was no room left, and I almost thought they were going to say the same thing again, but then it got more specific, and I loved the reason. You refused to go on an evacuation ship because you couldn't take all of your 500 bars of gold pressed platinum, which obviously, space being a bit of an issue on an evacuation ship, that's not getting the space, right? He refused to leave them, so that's why he's here. Great reason. Love it.
Yeah.
Right? And he's planted the device, and later on, O'Brien very quickly is like, we don't know for sure how they get past those security things, but we found Quark in there earlier. There's a pretty good chance it's him. And Kira immediately wants to wring his neck. So when Quark gets brought up with the Klingon, because Quark thinks he's just doing a business deal with the Klingons, but they bring him up to the command center. They throw him down. Kira grabs him by the neck almost instantly, wants to kill him. So it's this idea that, he genuinely, I do think that Quark just thought he was sneaking on some Klingons so he could sell some stuff, make some money, and they'd be on their way. Now that he's seeing people are actually in danger of being killed, and that Dax specifically is going to die because of what he's done, I do think him jumping on the Klingon's back and trying to fight him is it's not just him trying to make sure they don't punish him later. I think there's actually an element of real, oh, I need to fix this. I did F up. I have to.
Definitely. He's definitely a little bit guilty.
Yeah.
He feels guilty.
And it's as ill-advised as the moment is, he does try to fight a Klingon. And it's funny when he says, I've got him, and then the Klingon just starts bashing him into the counter and stuff.
And it is I mean, obviously Bashir has to understand the ploy here, but it's kind of his idea of what happens to when they subdue the other Klingon when they go to the doctors.
Yeah, he gets up and he's like, let's get Odo out the containment.
Yeah, but even before that, he's screaming in pain, and Bashir's like, well, it looks like it's just superficial damage, and Odo's like, Quark's like, play along.
Yeah.
And Bashir's like, oh, okay, right, we'll go with this, and so it feels calculated, which makes sense because he's a scheming little bastard.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in this case, it's coming from a different place to usual, which I kind of enjoyed. Yeah,
this is an act of redemption, and even the fact that he's the one who frees Odo feels kind of like a big deal. He has to hack it because it's like a little lockbox, and he's like, okay,
he's got to crack the safe. Yeah.
And I love that he just puts his ear up against it to listen to it to figure out what type of lock it is, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're playing on this idea that those big ears do actually lend to really good hearing, and that's what he's using them for right now.
I mean, it would make sense.
Everything goes down, and they eventually snatch. John Glover, Varad is trying to leave, and Sisko cuts him off. He tries to talk him down a few times, of course, out of friendship. Even tries to say, "Hey, let's go back down, try and swap it back," and obviously he's not having that.
Yeah, and he says, "You're not going to shoot me. If you even on stun, you risk killing the symbiote just because it's such a fresh transplant." And he's so confident that he just starts walking off.
And it shows Sisko's a character that he takes a shot. He does it.
He'd rather risk losing both, Jadzia and Dax, than let him, walk off as this new Dax, in this ill-gained, new body.
Yeah, because the symbiote gets a hand in choosing who they go to next. That's something that they're also meant to choose. So this is, even though the symbiosis has happened and like the memories are being shared and all that, this wasn't someone the symbiote picked. This is not like a, again, it ties back into the marriage thing where it's someone, it's someone you actually want to bond with and connect with. And they didn't pick this person. So in some ways it is I guess you could bring consent into this, like, of the symbiote itself is a very interesting concept. And when they put it back in Dax, and Dax wakes up and she's back to normal, she says, I can remember all his fears and everything, all the reasons why he did this, they're all sort of stored in the symbiote now. And, like, I'm always going to be able to remember that. So it's like,
and that's pretty interesting. Yeah, the idea that even though it was this short time, this is still part of that, that Trill's lifetime now, right? It's there.
However brief it was, because I was thinking maybe maybe they'll only get a few fleeting moments because they didn't have time to, the idea that maybe you have to actually be with the Trill symbiote for a lifetime, and it's over that lifetime that it builds up this bond and all of the memories get stored. I was thinking, does it actually download everything instantly as soon as it's connected? And seemingly it kind of does, because she's like, yeah, I have all these memories now. So and even that feels a bit invasive as well, and the idea that she now has this extra lifetime just tacked in there now that's a lot more negative and bitter. And because all the other ones have all had the symbiote to be a part of that life, right? So they've all been these unisons that have been willing, been consensual, and have all been influenced in part by who the symbiote is. Whereas this one, like, other than that one set a few hours where it was connected, it's just the memories of this adult life that is bitter, that is regretful. Because all the other people that they seem to connect to all seem to be young, right? They're all like, they get about 21 or so, and that's all. They always connect to someone about that age. So it's only a childhood they usually take on in hindsight. Whereas this guy, obviously, is already in his 40s or pushing 50 or whatever, and so it's interesting.
It is. It's really. I'm gonna make a comparison that you're gonna hate, but I think it, for me, is really interesting. Specifically with Doctor Who. Now, hear me out, because obviously there's a lot of parallels already with all the multiple lives. There are all these different facets of one individual, but there are common characteristics, and in a lot of ways you can play it as the core characteristics of the symbiote, and then the other personalities bring in different things. But I think even more specific to this situation, because the reason I've not brought this up really, because I can bring it up anytime with Trill, but specifically here there are certain versions of the Doctor, like the Valeyard, more recently the War Doctor, where there are these incarnations that are like between Doctors that don't really count. They're not numbered. They don't count towards the numbers, and they're like this darker personality, or they have some specific reason that they exist usually. But again, they're like, okay, they're not quite there, and it's they're these separate, like, not full lives. They're these like half lives that come in between the regenerations that have these wildly different personalities a lot of the time. And I feel like there's a lot of that in here, where it's this just this forced situation, and it's this wildly different personality coming in and impacting this, and those memories are still there going forward as they are in Doctor Who. But it really is this vastly different take, and it's fascinating looking back years later on Doctor Who as to how that has impacted later stories. And I really hope there's something similar with this here, where maybe this, I'm not saying this needs to be a constant thing, but this experience has to shape Dax, right? It's a huge moment in their life, and I think I hope that is you're kind of remembered as the show goes on, and it has some impact later on.
It might either never get brought up again, or if it does, I think it'll be like one or two key moments where it's relevant that this experience might come into play. I don't think it's going to be like a big game changer in terms of like episode to episode or anything like that.
Oh, I don't either. I just mean just like subtle personality shifts, maybe because obviously the whole idea of the trilogy, every time they become a new person, it's this iterative thing, right? So it builds upon the personalities of what's come before it. So in theory, Jadzia Dax should be slightly different next episode to what she was at the start of this one, just because there are these new experiences impacting her.
Well, I would argue, though, it won't take on any traits that he had, more so much that she might just be more sympathetic to someone who isn't as lucky as they were, if that
Possibly.
makes sense, Yeah. That said, this also reminds me of something from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because there was this one Halloween episode where Xander magically turned into a soldier, and then every so often for a few seasons, he'd, like, when it was relevant, he'd remember, I know how to, like, disarm or take apart a rifle or something.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of like that.
Yeah, I honestly, actually, just to very briefly go back to Doctor Who again.
How dare you?
It's not out yet, But with the 60th anniversary specials, with David Tennant coming back and being, by all accounts, their claim is the 14th Doctor, as opposed to just, it's not the 10th Doctor back again, it's the 14th. It's specifically a different iteration of it, which has had all those other lives in between. And they're saying, again, we've not seen it yet, but they're saying it'll be familiar because it'll be very similar to the 10th Doctor, but will be different, shaped by those events in between. And I do wonder, that's what I would like to see from this, is just subtle shifts in Dax's personality going forward from this episode. Just a couple of nudges here or there to say, maybe this is something that came in from this particular iteration, that particular life that wasn't there in Jadzia before this episode. Maybe there's a small interest in a new hobby or something that she'll pick up.
I like the idea of this. I'm not convinced the show had this planned based on this episode, and this was just a one-off idea.
I agree, but based on all the lore that they've set up for the Trill, that's what I would love to see.
Yeah, I think if it was some sort of big multi-episode arc, I could see it being more impactful later. But as it is, I feel like this is probably just in the vault, and we'll remember it happening. Yeah. But we've learned a lot of interesting things about Trill via this story. Some interesting ideas about like who the person is, and I feel like I understand the relationship between the symbiote and the host a bit better. Every time they've done an episode on this, I feel like I've understood it a little bit better than last time, because it is quite a complex idea, so they keep kind of reiterating it with different lenses and facets to make it click better. And I think that is. So I'm surprised this is as sort of lowly rated in IMDb as it is. I don't think it's a bad episode. I don't think it's a perfect episode, but I do think there's enough interesting ideas. Pacing is a little wonky in the last third or so, I would say. Just with maybe one too many conversations with Varad's wife trying to tell her, oh, things have changed, and her sort of either accepting this eventually or denying it up until a certain point. It's maybe just a little bit too in circles with that.
I agree with that, but yeah, that seems very harsh to it be below a 7 on IMDb.
Yeah. So next time on Deep Space Nine, we'll be having an episode called Cardassians, which feels like a big deal to just have an episode called that, given how prevalent they are in the show. There's a description on IMDb. Political tensions rise in DS9 when Bajorans board the station with a supposedly orphan Cardassian whom they have adopted. Oh.
Interesting.
We could be getting a sympathetic. Also, just based on the images, I try not to look too hard at these, just so I don't want spoilers, but it looks like our man in the clothing shop is back, or...
Oh, the spy dude.
Yeah. Well, is he? Garak, anyway, he's his name.
Yeah.
Played by Andrew Robinson of Hellraiser fame. So, because he was there for a few episodes last season, but it's been a while since we've seen him.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's next time on DS9, but our next review will, of course, be back over to Next Generation. They're just alternating up until about episode 11 of both, and then they start to get a bit wonkier with their scheduling. But for now, it's just backwards and forwards, nice and simple. So we'll see you for TNG next time on the show. But that has been our thoughts on this episode of DS9. Let us know what you think in the comments, and of course, if you hit the like button, it helps out a lot. More people will find the reviews in the channel, so please do hit the button. I hate saying it, I hate shelling out these YouTube features, but it does. They have proven time and time again, if you actually say it, it'll actually happen a bit more. So then, hit the button. Anyway, of course, the main thing you can do is go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us over there. Get early access to some things, including these Trek reviews, and get some bonuses for the movie podcast over in MailFuzz Movies, which is a sci-fi movie podcast. It's a horror movie podcast, which is pumping out a bunch of extra episodes over October. And go have a look at all that stuff. But that is the show, so thank you once again for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And, well, Odo was a bit confined this episode, but eventually, with a little help from Quark's very nimble fingers, Odo was able to fully release into the world.